Since the space age began, there have been 170 manned missions into space, including 6 manned missions to the moon and 14 robotic missions to the moon. All of these missions took lots of investment, planning, and investment to make possible. I'm going to tell you why space travel is so difficult and why it is so much less popular today. What makes the mission so difficult is the extremely high cost of each mission, the smallest miscalculations in flight path or fuel usage can cause huge problems, and there are lots of complications involved with a man being in space. Okay, so the first and most important obstacle is the cost of the mission. Now, there are lots of factors involved with determining the cost of the mission, like what parts you need, where you get the parts from, or what your overall objective of the mission is. So, here I have a couple of costs of things involved with space missions. Here, this is a space shuttle, and the cost of an assembly and the parts of a space shuttle is roughly $2 billion. And each time you launch that space shuttle already built into space, it costs between $20 and $50 million per launch, depending on what you're doing with them. And down here we have the International Space Station, which costs more than $100 billion a year to keep running. Lots of people say that this space station, or all of these space missions, offer little or no new information, and that is a waste of time and money. And so, because of that, the cost of flight is simply too high for NASA's budget to make it possible. So space exploration has slowed down significantly. Harold Friedman, the author of NASA Simply Stopped Being a Priority, says the federal funding budget has gone from 4.4% in 1966 to less than 0.5% of the total national budget in 2011 is spent on space exploration, which is shown here by this graph, where in the year 1966 it spikes super high, around 4.5%, and then after the moon landings it decreases drastically and comes here about 0.5% in 2011. Even though it is extremely difficult to generate enough funds to support a space mission, an even more difficult aspect is the minor miscalculations that come with a space mission. For example, if a spaceship comes in back to orbit at the wrong angle, it can simply bounce off the atmosphere and continue in orbit instead of falling back down to Earth. Now that can cause lots of problems. So what they did to solve this is they have a launch window. The launch window is a period of time where the rocket must be launched to reach its destination. This launch window is found by determining when the rotation of the Earth will send the launch location straight to the destination. You also need to determine the launch return window so that the shuttle lands on either a runway, or for older spaceships that used a capsule, land in the ocean instead of a crowded city. Calculating fuel usage is also extremely difficult with rockets, because as you're burning fuel and going through the atmosphere, your rocket is becoming lighter because it has less fuel on board. So it's very difficult to calculate your fuel efficiency as you're flying, and also that you can't fire a rocket straight up out of the atmosphere because it takes much more power. So they go on kind of a curved slope to get into orbit around Earth, and so you have to calculate the slope of that flight path and determine how much gas you're going to need for that. And also, it's very hard to calculate fuel usage when gravity isn't a factor on your ship. So if the rocket runs out of fuel during a space mission, you have to launch a rescue mission to bring it back. So you want enough fuel to do the mission, but you don't want too much fuel where it's weighing you down. So as with any type of complicated research or exploration of new areas, there are dangers involved with it. With space travel, these dangers are extremely hard to foresee and can often be lethal. During the space program, there were 18 deaths from spaceflight and 11 deaths for training during simulations. Deaths came from parachute failures, decompression of the spacecraft, and disintegration of the spacecraft during atmosphere entry and atmosphere exit. The most famous one of any of these crashes is the Challenger. 73 seconds after takeoff, it crashed. The reason that it crashed was an O-ring was leaking, causing the rocket to tilt slightly and firing it sideways into the ocean at 200 miles an hour, killing everyone on board. Another problem with a man being in space is space adaptation syndrome, which is what happens when a person's body cannot adapt to the G-force change in outer space, and it causes extreme nausea and disorientation. Symptoms of space adaptation syndrome are felt by about half of all astronauts that go into space during the first couple days of the journey, but some start to feel better and adapt to the G-forces after a couple days on the voyage. Research done by Delft University of Technology said that space sickness is caused by an asymmetry in the inner ear, skewing, making it difficult for you to tell which way is up and which way is down. Space missions are very difficult because of extremely high cost of the mission, possibilities of many miscalculations or malfunctions, and the danger of manned missions. Space can teach us so much about our universe, but is a very difficult research method to expand because there are just so many complications involved with it.